Yi Futian was able to perceive what was happening at the moment, but the qi of death was too strong, and his whole body was eroded. Yi Futian was able to perceive what was happening at the moment, but the qi of death was too strong, and his whole body was eroded. Before, even his life spirit was occupied by the will of death, and the life spirit tree was also dyed the color of death. He had been using the power of the ancient tree to expel the will of death, but now, something changed in his life spirit. He took a look at the situation he was in, and suddenly, a horrifying ray of golden light burst out of his body. The roaring sound came out, and all of a sudden, a loud shrieking was heard from Nine-Headed Phoenix's mouth. At this moment, the Nine-Headed Phoenix was leaving the space very quickly, his 9 heads exuding an aura of violence, his vast body full of lethal coldness. It was very imposing, but at this moment, tens of thousands of golden light rays burst from one of his huge mouths. He tilted his head, from which a loud roar came. He let out a long shriek. He wanted to close his beak, but it was torn up. A figure rushed out of it, bathed in golden light while holding another person, who seemed lifeless. The Nine-Headed Phoenix breathed out at Yi Futian. The horrifying life force struck Yi Futian. Boom! Crimson lightning flashed across the sky. His body turned into a bolt of lightning. His mouth spat out a keen crimson sword of destruction, the destructive dark power, veiling the sky and hiding the sun, covering the whole void sky. The Nine-Headed Phoenix was also an overawing figure of his clan, an unblemished demon saint, with appalling combat ability. Yi Futian looked up, and felt that the force of destruction was burying this space. The sacred light shone on his whole body, the deed of thorough comprehension exploding and purifying his body. His body turned into a cauldron of the great law, expelling all forces of darkness. Above his body, suddenly, the trumpeting sound of the elephant came, trembling between the sky and the earth. Inside his body, the roaring sound continued, just like the symphony of the great law. What was more frightening was that in the light curtain of the deed of thorough comprehension, a boundless huge elephant phantom showed up above Yi Futian's body. The divine elephant was like a demon god. With one roar, it could make the void air tremble. The rumbling sound continued. The flash of the divine elephant rose into the sky, slashing toward the sword of destruction that covered the sky and hid the sun. Appalling waves exploded in the space, as if the trembling space would be destroyed. Puff! The Nine-Headed Phoenix breathed the fire of destruction, engulfing the void sky and burning the sky and earth. Yi Futian held Xia Qingyuan's body in one hand, and took one step forward. The trumpeting sound trembled between the sky and earth. His body soared into the sky like a bolt of lightning, moving forward in the flame of destruction. The devastating fire burned down, but was shrouded by a sacred golden halo, blocked by the inviolable figure of a giant elephant. Yi Futian's fist punched out, and the sound of the elephant shook the sky. Tens of thousands of elephants roared in unison, trampling the space. Thousands of elephants came out galloping, crossing the sky. What a terrifying scene. The crimson Nine-Headed Phoenix made an extremely sharp shriek. His 9 heads spewed out flames, and his claws smashed down. Phantoms of elephants were torn and shattered, and the claws thrust toward Yi Futian. The demon aura billowed and surged between the sky and the earth. A boundless 9-headed phoenix bird appeared, its claws smashing down powerfully. It collided with Yi Futian's fist. Bang! With a loud noise, the 9-headed phoenix felt that his claws didn't smash on flesh, but rather on a statue of an elephant. Between them, 2 phantoms were colliding and clashing with each other. It was the confrontation between a sacred giant elephant and a 9-headed phoenix. The imposing might shook the 9-headed phoenix's body to the sky. His appalling eyes stared at Yi Futian. How could this human cultivator of true self-Saint Plain contend with him by strength? The enormous power of the elephant was the ability of a demon clan. Where did he learn it? At this moment, Yi Futian loosened the hand holding Xia Qingyuan, and branches and vines swept up and wrapped her body. His might was supporting her body. Yi Futian's chilly eyes stared at the 9-headed phoenix in the void sky, and the imperial bone of the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions in his body emitted a dazzling brilliance. Now, he was possessed by the divine elephant. Boom! He took a step out. The void air vibrated. A shocking scene of thousands of elephants trumpeting in unison appeared between the sky and earth, as if he was also the king of divine elephants. In another part of the Origin Mountains, a group of warriors was on their way. They were from the Divine Elephant clan, and were traveling in the sky. But at this moment, as if perceiving something, they all turned back and looked toward one direction, where they faintly sensed a divine feeling of being summoned. This feeling was wonderful, but they all understood that it must be related to their Divine Elephant clan. Could it be any treasure left by their ancestors in the Origin Mountains? Let's go. They turned around and went in that direction, all with solemn looks. On the battlefield, the nine-headed phoenix's body was suspended in the sky. When his wings spread, they were like clouds reaching the edges of the sky, covering the sphere and hiding the sun. Around his body, phantoms of divine elephants showed up. He walked in the air, trampling on history. He opened his wings, flapping. His body was like a flash of lightning, but he could feel that the repressive force limited his speed. Virum. Futian's body soared into the sky. It was the first time the nine-headed phoenix felt threatened by a human cultivator. He let out a rumble. The wheels of the great law turned into destructive beams of dark light, flowing up to the sky, surrounding his body, converging into an appalling storm of destruction. He spread his wings and thrust them out. Suddenly, beams of destructive light darted towards the surrounding elephant phantoms and collided violently. At this moment, Futian came out. He thrust two fists at the same time, piercing into the sky. The divine elephant guarded the sky dome, crushing the void air. The nine-headed phoenix's claws smashed down, followed by endless destructive storms, clawing toward Futian. Boom. Two of them had an appalling fight in the void sky. One human and one demon beast clashed against each other. The nine-headed phoenix spread his wings and flickered. Futian followed closely, punching his fist again and again in the void. They kept colliding and conflicting in different locations of the sky. The air was shaking violently. Lightning flashed by. Futian grabbed his claws and rushed upward, breaking through his defense and smashing toward the nine-headed phoenix's belly with his relatively insignificant fist. But as the punch smashed out, both the sky and earth made a dull sound, and that attack directly hit the nine-headed phoenix's huge body, cracking his bones and tearing his organs. He let out a painful shriek and smashed his claws towards Futian's abdomen. One punch after another, Futian blasted the nine-headed phoenix's huge body into the sky. He depended on the reaction force to fly backward, then crossed the void air, and returned to where Xia Qingyuan was, and held her in his arms. In the upper sky, the 9 heads of the phoenix were all bleeding, his blood dripping down. At this moment, his life force fluctuated drastically above his huge body. His body seemed somewhat unstable. His cold eyes took a glance at Futian. Wings flickering, he flew into the distance. He had given up. At this time, on another battlefield, Yaya did 9 sword strikes continually, one after another blowing toward Zhang Yuan. She also turned into a sword and charged toward Zhang's body. But behind Zhang Yuan, an appalling matrix showed up, devouring divine thunder of all skies and dropping down. Swords were all wrapped into the thunderstorm. At this moment, a devastating thunderstorm swept out, blasting on Yaya's body. Yaya spat out a mouthful of blood. Her body was struck by lightning, and she flew away, falling towards the lower sky. Bang! Yaya's body hit the ground and made a dent. Many broken swords flew out. Appalling phantoms suddenly appeared on the black earth and flung themselves at Yaya's body, like evil spirits. Boom! A flash of lightning came and wiped off the evil spirits. Zhang Xian looked down at Yaya in the lower sky and said, "You did a good job. From now on, you can cultivate by my side and serve me." Yaya raised her head and glanced at him coldly. This leading figure of the Violet Heavenly Dynasty was extremely arrogant. Virum! A thunderbolt struck through the void sky. Zhang Xian raised one hand and drew out a palm print of thunder. After a loud noise, a sword was inserted on the thunder matrix in his palm. The sword wanted to penetrate it, but was turned into ashes in the might of thunder. A figure flickered and landed on the ground, picking up Yaya. He raised his head and took a cold glance at Zhang Yuan, turning around and heading towards the sword matrix. Zhang Yuan was not in a hurry. For him, capturing them was like capturing sitting ducks. None of them could escape. During his fight with Yaya, he felt this woman's combat power was quite good. Any casual cultivator of his level, who was able to fight with him, for a while could be considered outstanding. Moreover, she was extremely decisive in her shots and hard on herself. She was also sincere to friends, and was eager to protect Yi Futian at any cost. So, he appreciated her, and thought it would be nice to have such a person around him. As for an intimate relationship, he only had cultivation in his mind, and had never thought about it. "Are you okay?" Yi Futian asked Yaya, infusing life force into Yaya's body. The will of life emitted from the branches and leaves of the world tree. Yaya's pale face turned red. Her gorgeous eyes looked at Yi Futian. For these years this elder brother had been calling her little sister, but always needed her protection. But now, he had grown to the point where she would no longer be needed soon. Her cultivation had not been restored to its peak, but Yi Futian was almost catching up with her. However, she was still happy. After this trip, if they could leave the mountain of origin safely, Yi Futian would no longer need her protection. Today, he had defeated the nine-headed phoenix big demon beast of unblemished Saint Plain. Yes. Yaya nodded her head slightly and said. Yi Futian didn't know she had thought this much. He left Xia Qingyuan beside Yaya, then turned and stood up. He raised his head, looking toward Zhang Yuan in the void sky. His stare was extremely cold. "Give me the corpse of the Renhuang and that piece of bone," Zhang Yuan said. Just now, he had noticed the battle between Yi Futian and the nine-headed phoenix. It should be the strength of that bone. He had not expected that piece of bone wanted by Yingzhou Mountain was the bone of the former divine elephant emperor of 10 directions. What an unexpected surprise. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1400 Fighting with the Supreme Master. Chapter 1400 Fighting with the Supreme Master. Yi Futian stood there, gazing at Zhang Yuan in the void sky. There was a booming sound coming out of his body, and it became louder and louder. A faint sound of an elephant trumpeting also came out of him. The void air trembled, as if an invisible might of the great law had fallen from the sky dome. The vast void air was permeated with an invisible might. The roar was getting louder and louder. Yi Futian walked in the void air, his body releasing thousands of beams of golden light, enveloped by the giant phantom of a sacred elephant. Zhang Yuan stared at Yi Futian's body. He seemed to have perceived the existence of the demon emperor's elephant bone. Did Yi Futian use the power of the emperor's bone to defeat the nine-headed phoenix big demon beast? Seeing Yi Futian coming, Zhang Yuan showed indifference, as if Yi Futian didn't even deserve his attention. He raised one arm, stretching out his hand to draw thunder from the sky. Above his head, the thunder divine matrix was in formation. The pattern was extremely appalling. As the Supreme Master, he was born with the talent to use the law of thunder, and had cultivated in at least 3 levels of all the 8 divine thunder laws of the Violet Heavenly Palace. The 3rd level meant the unblemished Saint Plain, and the 4th level was the Nirvana Saint Plain. And he had mastered the 3rd levels, or maybe even the 4th levels of the 8 thunder laws. How powerful would his lightning matrix of doomsday be? He held out one palm, and the divine thunder fell from the sky, like a punishment of heaven, exterminating all existence. Under the appalling might of the thunderous punishment, Yi Futian's figure looked insignificant, as if he would be turned into ashes under the mighty thunder of doomsday. Yi Futian was still striding in the void sky, all elephants trumpeting. Between the sky and earth, many demon elephants appeared, trampling the sky dome, dashing toward the upper sky. Around his body, the aura of deed of thorough comprehension appeared and shrouded him. He blended into the phantom of the divine elephant. The power of the bone of divine elephant emperor of 10 directions in his body erupted. He walked in the sky like an incarnation of the divine elephant. Booming! As the thunder descended, countless giant elephants galloped, darting towards Zhang Yuan in the void sky. The light of the divine thunder collided with countless giant elephants, which led to the disastrous scene. Phantoms of the giant elephants were annihilated and shattered by lightning and turned into nothingness. But as Yi Futian kept marching, endless elephants showed up. The dazzling light of heavenly punishment fell on Yi Futian's phantom of the divine elephant, trying to tear off the divine elephant's body. The sky and earth roared, and Yi Futian continued moving upward. Although the divine elephants were enduring the extreme pressure of destruction and being distorted, they kept sprinting in the void air, smashing toward Zhang Yuan. Zhang Yuan frowned. He looked at the phantom of the divine elephant rushing into the void, raised one palm and slapped down. Thunder was hidden in his palm. When the divine elephant struck, his palm directly hit the divine elephant's skull. A horrifying booming sound came out. Zhang Yuan's body was pumped into the sky, but the body of the divine elephant was also flashing with the horrifying thunder. However, the elephant figure was not broken or annihilated. The elephant's phantom was condensed, like a real divine elephant king on his arrival. That elephant bone. Zhang Yuan looked down at the elephant king's figure and felt the demon emperor's might bursting out of it. He could feel the existence of the elephant king's bone from the divine elephant's body. Could it be that this elephant figure was supported by that piece of elephant emperor's bone? That piece of bone was a treasure of the Runhuang level. The celestial fox palace was full of idiots who pretended to be clever. They even took out the bone of the divine elephant emperor of 10 direction and gave it to others. However, even though he had the bone of the demon emperor, what could he do? Zhang Yuan stretched out his hands. The divine thunder rolled in the upper sky, and the boundless sky was all covered by thunder clouds, which rushed towards the lightning matrix of doomsday above his head. The dazzling lightning illuminated this dark space, as if it had been daylight. Zhang Yuan looked down at Yi Futian, with the horrifying will of thunder in his eyes. Thunder from the 8 directions of the space converged. In the lightning matrix of doomsday, the thunder clouds sealed the sky and shrouded the lower space. The center of the matrix was connected to the divine thunder in the skydome. Zhang Yuan stretched out one hand, and suddenly an almost transparent divine sword of thunder appeared in his hand that carried such a dazzling light one could be blinded. The lightning thunder of doomsday. Zhang Yuan stretched out one hand, and the sword fell and thrust toward Yi Futian. At this moment, the sky and earth were under the power of destruction. Yi Futian was shrouded in lightning from the 8 directions, and could not avoid this sword, and had to receive the blow. Yaya looked at them. Her face was slightly pale. This was a Nirvana-level attack. Zhang Yuan, the supreme master of Violet Heavenly Palace, the strongest warrior of this generation, was considered as the successor of the future Violet Heavenly Palace, and direct disciple of the Heavenly Palace Lord. His strength was undeniable. As an unblemished saint, he was able to use the might of the Nirvana Saint Plane. Even though she had cultivated for 2 terms, she was still lost to him, while he wasn't even putting in an effort. Seeing the thunder sword of doomsday, she knew that if he had used the sword on her during the previous fight, she would not have been able to defend herself. Zhang Yuan even didn't need to try his best when confronting her. The divine elephant let out a roar and covered Yi Futian inside. He looked up to the sky, and countless demon elephants ran out. Yi Futian did not escape, but went straight to the sky. Savage golden divine elephants rushed toward the imminent sword of catastrophe, and the ultimate suppressing power of the great law swept out. The skydome was suffocating. Wisps of the demon emperors might burst out from the dazzling divine elephant's body. Boom! The sword slashed down. The thunder sword of doomsday thrashed on the body of the divine elephant. Endless light of destruction struck down, and suddenly engulfed the divine elephant's huge body, as if it was trying to penetrate and shatter it into pieces. Bang! Thousands of rays of golden light erupted over the divine elephant, suppressing the great law between the sky and earth. The void sky where the collision happened trembled violently, roaring. The scene was extremely horrifying. With a loud sound, Yi Futian and the divine elephant's body were both shaken downward. Crevices appeared on the divine elephant's body. Lightning of destruction penetrated inside and tried to destroy it, but the divine aura emitting from the divine elephant's body instantly repaired them. On the other side, the divine sword continued shattering, turning into endless lightning and fading away between the sky and the earth. The scene made Zhang Yuan frown. He stared at Yi Futian, with a pair of eyes twinkling with the will of thunder. How did the phantom of the divine elephant remain unbroken? Just now, that blow made him feel like the divine elephant was a real body, instead of a non-existent phantom. No wonder. It is the bone of the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions, Zhang Yuan said. Saint Plane cultivators were no longer influenced by the limit of mortal flesh, let alone cultivators of the Runhuang Plain. The flesh and veins of warriors of the Runhuang Plain were no longer normal ones. Their blood and bones were all unusual things. Their robust bloodline could be inherited by future generations. Their bones were bones of laws, containing cultivation wills. That piece of demon bone obtained by Yi Futian might be an extraordinary law bone of the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions, which contained so much might that it even could cast a divine elephant's figure. Most of Zhang Yuan's conjectures were correct, but he got the most important thing wrong. The divine elephant was not born of cohesion. It was a concrete life spirit cast by Yi Futian. Moreover, the bone of the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions was smelting in the life spirit, which made the life spirit contain the imperial might. Yi Futian heard Zhang Yuan's words and knew that he could not tell the difference. When one reached the Saint Plane, their life spirit would be the same as a real entity. The demon emperor's life spirit was the same as that of a big demon beast. Normal people could not see the difference. Now, Yi Futian summoned the life spirit of the divine elephant, but Zhang Yuan thought it was born of the demon emperor's bone. Boom! The void air trembled, and the divine elephant jumped out into the void, crushing the sky, which made Zhang Yuan frown. With such a powerful sword strike, Zhang Yuan could have even threatened a Nirvana Plane saint, but he not only failed to kill this true self-saint cultivator, but also didn't do much damage to him. Yi Futian kept coming toward him and launched attacks. Even though he knew Yi Futian used the power of the demon emperor's bone, it still upset him. The heavy might shrouded his body. Zhang Yuan was standing in the void air, and felt an extremely repressive force. The divine elephants were galloping across the clouds, and Yi Futian was like the king of all divine elephants, leading the elephant herd toward Zhang Yuan. Zhang Yuan waved his hand, and immediately the thunder matrix of doomsday fell, like a thunderstorm that engulfed everything, heading towards the elephants. Boom! Endless light burst out of Yi Futian's body. Around him, countless demon elephants ran across the sky, and the divine elephant king directly rushed into the matrix. A devastating storm raged above the skydome. The scene was horrifying. The rumbling sound came, and the thunder matrix of doomsday was broken, crazily bursting and shattering. The thunder matrix of doomsday was completely shattered by the endless divine elephants. The divine elephant king rushed into the void air, while Zhang Yuan hurriedly retreated toward the side. Two of them once again separated. Zhang Yuan stared at Yi Futian, looking a little embarrassed. Had this cultivator been able to challenge him by using the power of the demon emperor's bone? Boom! At this moment, he saw Yi Futian stepping in the void sky. He raised his head and saw an authentic divine elephant emperor in the upper air, striding on the skydome. Each step he took was followed by the trembling of the space, as if space was under his suppression. Zhang Yuan had a strong feeling that horrifying oppression was falling on his body. He started to wonder whether Yi Futian had gotten that piece of bone, as well as the demon emperor's cultivation methods. Bang! The void air trembled again, and the sky began shaking. Endless might dripped from the sky. All of the sudden, countless phantoms of divine elephants appeared in the boundless sky. Yi Futian turned into the incarnation of the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions, tramping over all skies and crushing all great laws. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1401 Snatches from All Sides. Chapter 1401 Snatches from all sides. Zhang Yuan stood in the void and summoned the divine thunder. But at this moment, he felt that the divine thunder of the great law was almost suppressed, as if it was difficult to gather. He looked up at Yi Futian, seeing that his body was dazzling, and he was possessed by the divine elephant. It was rumored that the demon monarch's Mount Divine Elephant Emperor of 10 Directions had invincible power. Ancient books said the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions trod on the sky and crushed the earth. Nowadays, nobody knew how powerful he was, but that the king of divine elephants, the overlord of the demon realm, must have unparalleled power to suppress all great laws. Futian was still striding. His steps seemed to contain the power that suppressed the great law, like a supreme mystical method that blended into the power of elephants. Each step was like a manifestation of the heavenly might. Even a powerful cultivator like Zhang Yuan felt an extremely powerful pressure from that. Bang! Futian took another step out, and the void air trembled. Tens of thousands of elephant phantoms fell and darted toward Zhang Yuan. A thunderous boom came from Zhang Yuan's body. He saw the endless phantoms of demon elephants stampeding towards him, so he released a gorgeous aura of thunder. Futian wanted to defeat him? How could he fail? He lifted one foot. A sacred aura burst out from his body, and his body seemed to turn into that of a thunder deity. The thunderous roar broke out from every part of his body, resonating with the great law. He also took a step out, and the sound of thunder broke through the world, sweeping over all directions. The attacking giant elephant figures all burst and shattered, collapsing over the skydome. An intimidating Renhuang might also have exploded from Zhang Yuan's body. The aura of Renhuang shone between the sky and earth, blooming from his torso. Zhang Yuan glanced at the walking figure in the air and said, "Even though the bone of the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions has supreme power, you are not the only one who possesses imperial instruments." After he said it, his body transformed into the body of the thunder god, and the unparalleled law of thunder erupted from every part of his body. The skydome seemed unable to restrain him. He walked in the void sky, heading toward Futian. Wherever he went, the divine light of thunder swept out of his body, destroying all phantoms of giant elephants. Futian watched Zhang Yuan coming step by step. He knew that Zhang Yuan also used a Renhuang object and merged it into his body, which made his body like that of a true thunder god. Moreover, as a supreme master, when Zhang Yuan turned into the thunder form, his physical body could become a matrix. Now he was the thunder matrix of doomsday. When he stretched out his hand, endless divine thunder could descend. Even the thunderous roar coming from his body contained power that could smash everything and destroy the phantoms of demon elephants. Zhang Yuan directly walked toward Futian. Those demon elephant phantoms were unable to approach him. The moment they came near him, they would either be swept away by the light of thunder, or be shattered by the horrifying thunder roars. He blended the Renhuang might into his law. How powerful it was! The two of them walked towards each other. Their power grew stronger and stronger, as if both sides had strong beliefs, and were not afraid of the collision. Boom! Finally they reached each other. Futian, who possessed the divine elephant, stomped on Zhang Yuan's body. The roaring thunder shone, and Zhang Yuan's body became larger, and turned into that of a true fighting god of thunder. The endless lightning turned into a series of purple lightning, connecting to his body. Countless wills of thunder between the sky and earth resonated with the fighting god of thunder he had transformed into. Zhang Yuan raised his fist, and punched it toward the elephant's dropping giant foot. The law of thunder was appalling in the sky. Countless thunder swords of doomsday blasted out of his fist, trying to penetrate the divine elephant. At the same time, the endless divine light of thunder erupted from his body, sweeping towards Futian. Finally, the phantoms of the divine elephants trembled, but their violent force of the same level also made Zhang Yuan move backward. His body rose straight into the sky, thrusting toward Futian like a bolt of lightning. The roars and light rays of thunder erupting above his body could destroy all the existence of the Saint Plane, but it couldn't annihilate the divine elephant that enveloped Futian. Futian also raised his fist and punched forward. At this moment, the figure of the fighting thunder god and the divine elephant collided head-on. The space surrounding them seemed to be falling apart. Every attack between them was extremely shocking. Over the skydome, the light of destruction shot out frantically. The void sky kept trembling. Nobody knew how many times they collided with each other, but neither of them retreated. The life spirit that shrouded Futian merged into the real demon bone of the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions. It was not a treasure, but it was stronger than other ordinary Renhuang-level treasures. When it merged into the life spirit, Yi Futian's life spirit also contained the might of the demon emperor. It became unshakable. However, Zhan Yuan was also extremely powerful, and his body was also integrated with the Renhuang's object, which made him become one with the great law of thunder, and now, he seemed to have become the law itself. In the end, they were separated from each other. The violent blasts were still going on madly around them. The invisible storm swept through the vast and boundless space. Thunder kept rumbling, and there were still endless demon elephants. Zhan Yuan was emotionless. The overbearing might bloomed from his pupils. How could he gain so much strength with the aid of the demon emperor's bone? His attacks couldn't destroy Yi Futian. Above the sky, thunderclouds rolled. Lightning from the 8 directions of the space surged. He turned into the thunder god, controlling tens of thousands of divine thunderbolts to thrust toward Yi Futian all at once. The astonishing sound of elephants trumpeting erupted from Yi Futian's body. The divine light of the great law started to flow. Endless demon elephants around him helped resist the bombardment of rolling divine thunder. Virum. At this moment, Zhan Yuan disappeared, and the sound of thunder echoed in the space. His body was connected to the sky dome, gathering millions of divine thunderbolts and turning them into a flash of lightning, thrusting toward the divine elephant figure Yi Futian transformed into. Boom, boom, boom. Zhan Yuan suddenly came in front of Yi Futian, and the endless attacks fell on Yi Futian's body. Even with the protection of the divine elephant life spirit, Yi Futian still groaned, and his life spirit was on the edge of bursting. The attacking force was appalling. His body was shaken back, and his life spirit seemed to collapse. His hand stretched backward, and a dazzling long stick appeared in his palm. Boom! The elephant stood on the sky dome, stopped moving backward, and slashed the stick with the enormous power of the divine elephant. The sky dome was about to collapse, and the phantom of the thunder god transformed from Zhan Yuan's raised arm and sent out countless stick shadows. The void sky shook violently. After a loud boom, Zhan Yuan's body was blasted down into the lower air. Yi Futian's body was also shaken, his life force fluctuating, organs trembling. Just then, Yi Futian suddenly perceived a strong sense of danger. He immediately turned around and saw a golden lightning bolt striking toward him at the fastest speed. He lifted one foot and stepped out. The divine elephant made a fierce roar again, trembling the sky and earth, but the golden lightning bolt didn't stop at all, rushed directly in front of him, and hit the light curtain formed by the divine elephant. The lightning bolt penetrated the light curtain, creating a cut on the divine elephant's body. Inside, Yi Futian was like hit by electric shocks. He let out a groan, and the golden lightning bolt rushed straight towards his own body. The elephant's life spirit suddenly collapsed and vanished, but Yi Futian's body was still blooming with a golden aura, with the divine elephant's hidden armor inside. At the same time, the stars surrounded him. He swiftly moved in the void air and wanted to retreat, but it was still too late. The speed was too fast, and he was hit the moment the idea occurred to him. The defense of stars shattered, and the golden aura was cracked. Yi Futian spat out blood, and his body flew straight back. That figure in the lightning moved like a shadow, and it continued to rush toward Yi Futian. His speed was reaching the max limit. Virum! Countless sharp swords thrust out of Yi Futian's body, and a sword of Kasaipa also dashed out of the center of his eyebrows, racing toward Zhan Yuan. The figure in golden light took out one hand to deflect the sword, and only then did he stop. This man was wearing a gorgeous golden robe, but looked extremely ugly, with a pair of eyes like a mouse. Yi Futian recognized him at a glance. There weren't many people with this kind of appearance in the heavenly mandate realm. He belonged to the purple gold rat clan in the demon realm, of course. They proclaimed themselves to be the purple gold divine rats. Before, Zhu Zhao had reminded him not to provoke the demon beasts of this clan. They were vindictive and extremely egocentric creatures, even though a top figure had appeared from the rat clan, and this clan was prospering, the self-abasement running in their veins still could not be removed. Moreover, people of the rat clan were extremely greedy and liked treasures. This purple gold rat that suddenly showed up was aiming at the treasure in Yi Futian's hand, and he chose the right time. Leave everything to me. I will not kill you. The purple gold rat stared at Yi Futian and said. His narrow and long eyes looked sly but extremely indifferent, showing some sort of pride. Read more chapter on novel full. Yi Futian glanced at him coldly. Did this warrior of the rat clan also want to step in? The life force around his body was flowing. He seemed to have perceived something, raised his head, and looked into the distance. There, he saw a few more imposing figures coming, all staring at him with anger. Seeing this, Yaya looked sullen. Did she fail to leave them behind? She had tried her best to bring Yi Futian and Xia Qingyuan here. Many warriors dared not set foot on this place, but those top figures still managed to enter this territory and would not give up the things Yi Futian had gotten. Especially now when they had seen the battle between Yi Futian and the Supreme Master Zhan Yuan, they would even more strongly believe that the power of the bone of the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions that Yi Futian had obtained was amazing, and it would be a huge gain for the demon cultivators. I've heard that the purple gold rats are now very strong, but you still can't change their old nature to do such sneaky things. Zhan Yuan glanced over the purple gold rat and said, If you want it, you should openly take it. The purple gold rat looked at him. Rats never cared about whatever methods they used, as long as they could get whatever they wanted. Nobody should forget how hard he and his ancestors worked for their clan to prosper as they do today. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1402 Siege. Chapter 1402 Siege. The ominous atmosphere in this space became more and more intense. The previous battles had broken many rusty swords on the ground, and there were even evil ghosts rising from the underground that seemed to be transformed from the dead people's lingering grudges. At this moment, a pair of ghostly hands stretched out from a crack in the ground. A phantom showed up and pounced towards the person standing in the void sky. As more and more ghosts joined the fight, the warriors, who had just arrived, all perceived the threat. They glanced at Yi Futian indifferently. They must deal with him as soon as possible and leave. For an instant, the warriors released their life forces, which followed Yi Futian, and attacked the lower sky. Yi Futian looked up at these warriors. In his life palace, the flame was burning, and the fire spirit orb seemed to be devouring his life palace. And then the blaze rushed to his whole body, engulfing him all at once. For a moment, he transformed into flame god of war, with all the power of his body burning. At the same time, in the endless flame, there was also a golden aura of the divine elephant. The elephant's roars came from his body. A mighty force overwhelmed the vast space. He held a huge stick of stars in his hand, with an unparalleled bearing. Yaya stared at Yi Futian. She rose to her feet, standing on the ground. The infinite sword will erupted from her body, drawing the great law from heaven, and summoned tens of thousands of swords. A sword matrix was formed around her body. She could tell that Yi Futian had been injured, and now he had to face such oppression. So many warriors were targeting him. If he let the fire of the law burn again, he would run out of his energy, let alone what level of combat ability he could use. It would be difficult for him to persist for long. Moreover, these warriors were all capable of using nirvana skills. It was looking like none of the top forces from the heavenly mandate realm would be weak. The purple golden rat lifted a brow when he perceived Yi Futian's life force, and his narrow eyes looked cold. He stretched out a palm, and immediately a sword that could release Run Huang might appeared in his hand. This was odd. A rat demon beast cultivated in swordsmanship. However, it was rumored that when the old ancestor of the purple golden rat clan was in humble circumstances, he once served many powerful figures and dedicated himself as a beast servant, serving many top figures, and at the same time, secretly learned many human cultivation methods. So warriors of the demon realm showed no surprise when seeing this purple golden rat beast use sword skills. Renhuang level might was being released from the sword. It was a Renhuang object. The sword body was thin and narrow, and had strong penetrating abilities. Virum. The purple golden rat was standing on top of the void sky. He wielded his sword, and for a moment, there seemed to be a rain of golden swords appearing in the void sky, each sword raindrop containing the might of the great law. Over the sky dome, a curtain of sword rain enveloped the boundless space. The rat's sword pointed to Futian, and immediately, the sword rain followed and attacked Futian. The rain curtain covered the sky, and the phantoms of demon elephants around Futian suddenly were all penetrated, like being pierced through by thousands of swords and smashed directly. When the sword rain approached Futian, it even penetrated the might of flames, and made a slight dangerous rustling sound. The elephant roar continued in Futian's body. A giant figure of a golden elephant appeared around him. The sword rain fell with no end and kept making a harsh shrieking sound. The sword raindrops sneaked into the golden divine elephant's body little by little. Boom! Futian took a step out and shook away those shrieking golden swords from the divine elephant figure. He moved quickly and slashed out the long stick in his hand. A huge stick shadow appeared in the upper sky and slashed toward the purple golden rat's head regardless of the spatial distance. The purple golden rat shunned and turned into a dazzling bolt of golden lightning, running between the suppressing forces of the great law. His speed was still extremely fast, and he directly avoided the attacks of the long stick, and soon appeared in another direction. I should finish the battle quickly, he thought to himself. More evil spirits from the ground rushed up to catch him. Wisps of thoughts entered his mind, and made his willpower unstable. He glanced toward them and said, "If you continue consuming time like this, it will be no good for anyone." It was not enough for him alone to take the treasure. Zhan Huan did not expect Futian to have a whole card. Where did this fire that enhanced his strength and endowed him with nirvana-level abilities come from? Futian seemed to carry many secrets. Zhan Yuan strode in the void air. The lightning swept out and destroyed the chaotic life force around him that wanted to erode his body. The nirvana-level warriors, who just came to the void space, all started to take action. Each of them had an extremely terrifying life force. They all exerted pressure towards Futian in the lower sky. For a time, Futian was besieged by enemies. Boom! The void air shook fiercely. Futian stepped in the void sky, with his body shrouded by flames and his hands wielding the long sticks. Phantoms of demon elephants galloped between the sky and earth. The vast endless space seemed to be under heavy pressure. The purple golden rat demon beast started to move. He held the imperial sword high in his hand, bearing endless wills in the sky. The golden divine rain fell. His body flickered, heading straight toward the lower sky. The sword came out, and sword rain fell, annihilating everything. Futian felt the power, and slashed out the long stick in his hand towards the sky, and buried the sword rain. But the purple golden rat monster was extremely fast, and changed his position in an instant. He launched the sword rain, and wanted to control Futian in that space. Zhang Yuan stepped in the void air. The thunder roars around him shook the sky and earth. Endless thunder from the sky gathered in his body, and turned into thunderous light that destroyed everything, slashing out towards Futian. Futian's stick shadow smashed out again, crushing on the lightning, and a booming sound burst out. Above his head, a Nirvana saint launched an attack. A huge dark palm print came from the sky dome, reflecting black gold light, containing the strong airflow of destruction, and tearing the void air. Futian could only slash out the stick again, his body swirling, and the stick shadows appeared. The dark palm prints collapsed and shattered. Another golden bell released tens of thousands of rays of light, crushing the void air and crumbling the place where Futian was, hiding the might of Ren Huang, and wiping out all existence. Futian's body soared into the sky. The shadow of the stick covered the sky, and it suddenly chopped down. After a loud clanging noise, the ancient Ren Huang clock was shaken back, but the horrifying killing rays of light's attack didn't stop. The Ren Huang bell also returned and ran over his body again. The powerful attacks continued. Futian kept waving his stick, but these warriors did not even get close to him. They trapped him there and attacked wildly, consuming Futian's energy, making it impossible for him to escape. After all, every person who was attacking him was powerful. Seeing the battle scene in the void sky, Yaya looked disgusted. All these were top figures, Nirvana saints, and a supreme master. But they all assaulted Yi Futian at the same time, just so they could steal his belongings. As the fight went on, more warriors arrived in the area one after another. Some people were afraid to come because of the danger, but there were still a few bold people who entered the battle. An intimidating life force came, and a Nirvana-level big demon beast Zhu Yin came to this area with Zhu Zhao, Yu Sheng and others. Seeing the battle in the void sky, Yu Sheng looked extremely worried. Boom! The sky dome trembled, and divine elephants trumpeted. In the distance, a group of powerful divine elephants raced towards this side. They glanced down at the battlefield in the lower sky, and saw the life force erupting from Yi Futian's body, which made them feel something familiar, as if it was from their ancestors. We should help him, Zhu Zhao said. He saw Yi Futian being hit by one attack right after the other, defending himself alone, when the attacks were coming from so many intimidating warriors. The Nirvana-level Zhu Yin great demons might swept out and rushed towards the sky dome. Bang! A violent sound came out. The sound of elephants trumpeting shook the sky. Above Zhu Yin, the great demon beast's head, giant elephants marched in the air, among whom, one of the divine elephants glanced at him and said, "Go away." Yi Futian, the divine elephant clan wanted him. The roar continued, and they kept treading in the void air. Warriors on the other side of the battlefield saw warriors of the divine elephant clan, and their attacks became even stronger. In the shadows of the stick, the purple golden rat demon beast crossed the sky and passed through the stick shadows. Horrifying might blasted over his moving body, but his body turned into the size of a rat and directly penetrated the great law attacking force. This was his innate talent. Bang! With a loud noise, the purple golden rat demon beast almost penetrated Yi Futian's body and smashed Yi Futian's overall defense. But Yi Futian's body seemed to have a terrifying flame might that made him scared and devoured him. The golden aura wrapped around his body. The rat's sharp claws clawed toward Yi Futian. Using the reaction force, he stepped back. His heart thumped fast. What was that power? Boom! The might of the thunder laws also blasted over Yi Futian, making his body fall to the ground. The purple golden rat was extremely fast. He continued to dive down and wanted to take Yi Futian away. A gust of sword might arrived in an instant and thrust straight toward him. The purple golden rat spun his body. The Runhuang sword in his hand thrust down and turned into a horrifying golden storm that collided with the sword. The sharp shrieking sound came, and golden blood flew from the purple golden rat. He was shaken to the void sky. Yaya fell to the lower sky with Yi Futian and dropped on the sword peak. Both of them spat out blood. Yu Sheng and others rushed to check them, but considering their levels, they couldn't change the situation at all. In the void air, those top saint figures looked down at them. Get out of our way. Warriors of the divine elephant clan marched in the void sky. Many divine elephants descended at the same time, and suddenly their might shook the sky. Even the supreme master Zhan Yuan of the Violet Heavenly Palace didn't dare to trouble them. That purple golden rat demon beast looked sullen. The divine elephant clan was also very powerful. In the era of the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions, the divine elephant clan was the king of the realm, and they still had a vast heritage after so many years. Now, since they had arrived, it was difficult for him to take the treasure. Warriors of different forces stared at each other with anger, and both Yi Futian and Yaya were severely injured. Yi Wuchen looked indifferent, with anger and sadness in his heart. So many warriors of the heavenly mandate realm chose to besiege one single person. However, they simply could not participate in combat of such a high level. He raised one foot and walked toward their direction. This space was suppressed by countless broken swords and filled with horrifying chaotic thoughts. Boom! There was another loud bang. Warriors stepped down and exerted pressure on Yi Futian. Except for the warriors of the Divine Elephant clan, none of them wanted to give up. He belongs to me, Zhan Yuan said indifferently. He might not want the Divine Elephant Imperial bone, since it was the bone of the ancestor of the Divine Elephant clan, and he didn't want the corpse, either. However, he was interested in Yi Futian. Yi Futian had more treasures. The corpse belongs to me, another Nirvana-level warrior said. They had already started to discuss how to divide gains. But at this moment, a rumbling sound came out, and the mountain peak was shaking. They turned around and looked toward that side. On the top of the mountain, in front of the giant sword inserted in front of the sword peak, a man in white with long hair blowing in the wind was standing, holding the hilt of a sword with both hands. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1403 The Threat of Renhuang. Chapter 1403 The Threat of Renhuang. The warriors' faces all turned pale. They could perceive the chaos going on in the space. The endless broken sword seemed to be used to seal a land of demons, and this sword peak might be the place where the main sword was located. The giant sword inserted above the sword peak probably was the key to seal this space. Once it was pulled out, the consequence might be disastrous. However, at this moment, someone was trying to pull the sword out. "Stop it," people yelled. In front of the giant sword, the figure pulled it with both hands, and the ground made a roaring sound. The vast boundless space was trembling. Those broken swords inserted into this land made high-pitched shrieks, and a devastating storm swept through the vast void air. Under the ground, horrible life forces were released, like countless dead warriors remaining thoughts that had been suppressed by this land. At this moment they were all being released. Too presumptuous. A Nirvana plane warrior raised his hand and launched attacks towards the figure that was pulling the sword. But a terrifying vortex appeared over the sword, and quickly engulfed the person pulling the sword. There seemed to be a phantom-like figure amid the chaotic airflow that rushed into his mind, rolling towards his body. The attack of the Nirvana plane warrior came near him, but was blocked by the terrifying storm. "It's dangerous, step back," the sword saint yelled. But Yi Wuchen still stood in the center of the storm. The blue veins on his body were visible. There was horrifying bloody light in his eyes. The extremely chaotic thoughts invaded his mind directly, as if they were trying to overtake his mind. The sword saint's face looked very pale. He could understand the situation Yi Wuchen was facing at the moment. The sword that the mysterious warrior gave him at that time, the demonic sword he was using today, contained similar energy just like this one, and also full of demonic thoughts as if actual demons were dwelling inside. However, those demonic thoughts had been sealed, so his demonic sword was now a safe weapon. But even so, the sword saint was very clear how Yi Wuchen suffered every time he used the demonic sword. The agony was unbearable for normal people even though the sword had been sealed. What would happen if the seal was released? The huge sword that Yi Wuchen wanted to pull out was like his demonic blade. It was sealed and used to quell the land. But at this moment, Yi Wuchen wanted to pull it out. He would die. How devastating the consequence would be if the lingering beings in the land were freed from the quelling power. What kind of price was waiting for Yi Wuchen at the center of the storm to pay? The sword saint could imagine. Had the situation already become this serious? Yi Wuchen's eyes glowed with terrifying bloody light, as if they were no longer his own eyes. However, deep in his pupils, there was still a sense of sobriety. It was his willpower fighting against the erosion of terrifying power. His body didn't seem to belong to him anymore, but his hands still held the giant sword tight. Boom! The earth was still shaking, and countless horrifying phantoms flew from the ground, stunning those who wanted to assault Yi Futian for a while. They looked quite unsettled. Was this lunatic trying to kill everyone? Yi Wuchen didn't stop. Under countless gazes, he pulled out the giant sword with both hands little by little. He didn't have time to think. So many top figures joined forces to suppress Yi Futian, and even discussed how to divide gains. In a situation like this, what else could he do to counter them? There might be many demons buried in the ground, but what was the difference between these bloodthirsty top cultivators and the demons? Considering Yi Futian's ability, he was even more likely to survive in front of the demons in the ground. However, those greedy top figures would not let him go. So after seeing the whole situation, Yi Wuchen came to the sword peak alone and pulled out the sword. A beam of dark light vertically pierced into the sky. The sword was finally pulled out. The sword peak collapsed, and a terrifying air torrent rushed into the sky. But Yi Wuqian's body was submerged by the infinite darkness. The ground shook, countless broken swords flew up, and the land cracked. Many deep crevices appeared. From the cracks, many hands came out and grasped onto the ground. Many phantoms rose and rushed directly toward the cultivators fighting in the void sky. The situation was chaos. Many warriors looked terrified and scattered instantly, trying to escape. Boom! On the sword peak where Yi Wuqian was located, the land was divided into two, splitting up from the middle. The two pieces of land seemed to be completely divided, and the gap was getting bigger and bigger. Between the divided pieces of land, horrifying life forces were spreading. Everyone was horrified. Countless air currents continued to flow into the giant sword. The open ground turned into an endless abyss. Looking down from above, no one could see the bottom of it. There were only horrifying life forces being released out of the abyss. At the time, in the bottomless abyss, in the endless darkness, two flashes of bloody light suddenly appeared. These two flashes of red light looked extremely scary, like the eyes of a demon. The terrifying demonic light aroused tumult in the whole abyss. But just after a moment, these two flashes of light dispersed as if nothing had happened. Yi Wuqian held the sword tight. His body was shaking, and his eyes turned into the color of blood. His handsome face became distorted, and the energy of his whole body seemed to be devoured. But the life force surrounding his body was extremely terrifying. He didn't seem to be himself at all. He turned around and looked toward other people. The Supreme Master Zhan Yuan was using the Divine Thunder to resist the erosion of demons. Warriors of the Divine Elephant clan were trampling over the sky to suppress evils. Other warriors also used their means to defend. However, even in this chaotic situation, the purple golden rat demon beast had not given up yet. He turned into a bolt of lightning and thrust towards Yi Futian as if, at this moment, he still wanted to take Yi Futian away. He would never give up without reaching his goal. However, at this moment, he suddenly became alert and perceived a dangerous life force. He immediately turned around and saw a pair of demonic eyes shrouding him. The horrifying demonic will directly came into his eyes and invaded his mind. He trembled, showing panic, and hurried back. The giant sword swept by, chopping over the space he was in. A terrifying trembling sound came out, and the purple golden rat beast spat out blood like crazy. He seemed to be covered with a layer of purple gold armor that blocked most damage for him. Otherwise, this blow would have been far more serious. The purple gold rat demon beast was moved far away and spat out a mouthful of blood, and wisps of airflow rushed towards him. The purple gold rat demon beast turned into golden lightning and fled through a gap, wanting to escape this area. Had that lunatic been eroded by demons after drawing the sword, and had become a demon himself? His blood-red eyes were extremely scary, and Yi Wuqian flashed away. The sword in his hand devoured endless air flows between the sky and earth, and then chopped down towards those warriors in the void air. Suddenly, a terrifying dark vortex gushed out, like numerous phantoms together with the sword dashing toward those warriors, and rushed directly toward their bodies. At the same time, Yi Wuqian's body turned into a dark lightning bolt and struck directly toward Zhan Yuan of the Violet Heavenly Palace. Zhan Yuan saw Yi Wuqian coming. Yi Wuqian's body was wrapped by the horrifying air currents. At this moment he was not himself. Boom! The rolls of thunder kept roaring, and the lightning illuminated the whole sky. Thousands of flashes of thunder and lightning blasted toward Yi Wuqian. Under divine thunder, those countless phantoms were directly wiped out. The violent lightning struck directly over Yi Wuqian's body. The sword left Yi Futian's hand and turned into dark lightning. It broke through the forces of heavy thunder and crushed on Zhan Yuan's body. The hissing sound came. It seemed that Zhan Yuan's body was almost penetrated. Blood flew out of his body, and the devastating air currents rushed into him frantically. His whole body was filled with the breaths of death and was growing black. The lighting was gradually fading, and his face looked dead. At this moment, a beam of strong light bloomed. Zhan Yuan let out a roar. Over his body, the mighty imperial power swept out, and a phantom of the supreme Renhuang Lord appeared. The sacred light shrouded Zhan Yuan's body, expelling the dark air flows around him, and directly wiping out all the chaotic wills. The Emperor's aura shone. The divine thunder came and destroyed everything, and many chaotic wills around him were all shattered. His eyes were extremely sharp, like the eyes of a deity, sweeping towards Yi Wuqian. "Just evil crafts," he said in disdain. His eyes looked indifferent. He pointed his finger forward. Yi Wuqian took back the sword and slashed out a strike. The sacred lightning illuminated the vast skydome and collided with the terrifying dark sword light. An unparalleled life force of destruction erupted, and an astonishing storm blew across the world. Boom! Finally, Yi Wuqian was the first one who couldn't bear it anymore. After all, he was using the external strength to fight. Instead of his ability, how could he fight against the real Renhuang will? The flash of lightning pierced through his body. If he had not had the endless airflow as protection, the blow would have been enough to turn him to ashes. "We should go first." Renhuang glanced at the place and said, frowning. It seemed that the danger had been triggered, and he had to get Zhang Yuan to leave with him. "Let's take him with us as well." Zhang Yuan pointed his finger at Yi Futian and said. Even at this moment, he still didn't forget capturing Yi Futian. Especially after his confrontation with Yi Futian, Zhang Yuan became more interested in him. This young man was even able to compete with all the top warriors at the same time, by using the power of the bone of the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions. And how did he launch the flames of the way? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 14:0 For the Hearts Following the Lie. Chapter 14:0 For the Hearts Following the Lie. The Renhuang figure of the Violet Heavenly Palace looked toward Yi Futian, slightly nodding, and then stepped forward. Covered with the bright thunderlight armor, he slightly raised his arms and headed toward Yi Futian. Yaya and others looked sullen. Was this Renhuang warrior also going to capture Yi Futian? Yi Wuqian on the ground rose to his feet again. He held the sword with both hands, and the bloody light burst out from his deep, dark eyes. At this moment, he seemed to have given up his self-consciousness, and the sword will darted toward his body madly and swallowed him up. He seemed to have become part of the sword. Not only that, all the horrible air flows around him and the space poured into his body. With a roar, Yi Wuqian's body was devoured. Over him, a real demon appeared. The demon stared at the Renhuang warrior, and the sword in his hand was also roaring and shaking. "You are giving yourself to evils," the Renhuang of the Violet Heaven Palace shouted at him solemnly. Even his voice contained horrifying might of thunder, and wanted to penetrate the demon's body. But it was of no use. Yi Wuqian was still standing there. The Renhuang of the Violet Heavenly Palace had no choice but to put down Zhang Yuan. He needed to deal with the monster in front of him first. "You give me a moment," he spoke to Zhang Yuan. Soon the might of thunder fell from the sky, and his body turned into the law of thunder, just like a real figure of thunder deity. He took one step forward, crossing the void sky and heading toward Yi Wuqian. Virum. At the same time, the sword saint held the overbearing demonic sword. The terrifying demonic might surged straight to Zhang Yuan's body. Yu Sheng, Zhu Zhao, and Black Wind Condor did the same. Since they couldn't fight with the Renhuang, they would target Zhang Yuan. Everything started with him. Accompanied with a rumble, the demon Yi Wuqian launched an attack on the Renhuang. The sword penetrated his body directly, but the Renhuang's body was nothing but a thunder thought. The thunder thought also penetrated the demon's body. Suddenly, the huge demon burst frantically. The light of endless thunder entangled it, and with a loud noise, phantoms around it all burst and shattered. Yi Wuqian's figure showed up from the explosion, but again fell feebly. However, the Renhuang was not well at this time either. His body was exposed to countless dark airstreams that devoured his thunder form, making the lightning gradually dim, and trying to devour his thunder thought completely. He glanced toward Yi Futian with a cold look. "Take them away," Yaya sitting on the ground said to a beautiful figure next to her. That person looked at Yaya with a pair of gorgeous but emotionless eyes. She was the first beauty of the eastern state of that time, the glass saint. "Go to that abyss," Yaya stared at the glass saint's eyes and said, showing no expression. The glass saint also looked back at her eyes. If she went to the abyss, would she survive? Was she telling her to go die? At this moment, her heart was stirred, no longer as calm as before. Aren't you always looking for the answer? If you find it, you die, Yaya said in an extremely indifferent tone, without any emotion, as if this unsmiling girl, who was always patted on the head by Yi Futian, had turned into a real cold-blooded and ruthless sword saint of the void. But was she ruthless? She asked the glass saint to die. The glass saint lowered her head slightly, looking at Yi Futian. But at this time, Yi Futian was also looking up at her. The glass saint wondered what answer was she looking for. Okay, she answered. When the horrifying might befell, and the Run Huang of the Violet Heaven Palace came near, she grabbed Yi Futian and Xia Qingyuan with both hands. Seeing Yi Futian wanting to move, she released the might of ice and sealed Yi Futian's body using extreme coldness, and she took the two of them directly toward the direction of abyss. The Run Huang frowned and continued to pounce toward them, but at this moment, a bright sword matrix shone across space, and thousands of rays of sword light slashed out. Yaya, severely injured, submerged the Run Huang figure with the sword light. You are playing with fire, the Run Huang said coldly, and continued moving forward. The thunder light directly destroyed the might of sword. Virum. The sword matrix engulfed toward him, and a sword burst out from the center of the matrix. The Run Huang of the Violet Heavenly Palace raised his hand to draw the divine thunder. The imperial might swept across the world and destroyed tens of thousands of swords, but that single sword continued to drop down and penetrate his body. At the same time, those dark forces that devoured his body became stronger, little by little making his body disperse. He turned around and took a glance. At this time, Zhang Yuan was also under siege. All his opponents seemed to be attacking him at all costs. Zhang Yuan had been wounded by Yi Wuchen before. Otherwise, he would have not been threatened by these low-level people. Boom! Zhang Yuan's fist collided with Yu Sheng. Yu Sheng clasped his fist directly. The violent might of thunder pierced through his body and banged on Yu Sheng, but Yu Sheng's hand still clasped on him tightly. The sword saint's sword chopped off. Zhang Yuan let out a roar, and accumulated divine thunder in his palm. The black wind condor swooped down toward Zhang Yuan. He had almost turned into a demonic instrument, a pair of eyes full of killing thoughts. Zhang Yuan raised his head, the terrifying thunderous light erupting in his eyes, shooting toward the black wind condor. The demonic sword split the sky. Blood splashed and a deep blood mark appeared on Zhang Yuan's body, but his arm also shook Yu Sheng away. Boom! There was another loud bang. A long stick slashed down. The might of thunder violently blasted from Zhang Yuan's body, but he was still pushed away by the force. When he stopped, Zhang Yuan looked down at his arms and body. A startling bloodstain was there, as if being eroded by demonic wills. A lot of dark airflows rushed toward him, and his face looked extremely gloomy. You retreat first, a voice from the Run Huang of the Violet Heavenly Palace said. He shook his arm, and the sword matrix was annihilated. Yaya's body was shaken out, blood splattering in the void sky, and she weakly fell on the ground. The Ren Huang turned into a flash and ran toward the glass saint and Yi Futian. The glass saint now was standing on the edge of the abyss. In the bottomless abyss, there were endless dark air torrents, as if ancient monsters were looming inside, filled with infinite danger. If the power in this abyss broke out, even the Ren Huang would not dare stay here. She took a glance at Yi Futian, and then stepped forward and leaped down toward the endless abyss. She hoped Yi Futian could survive. Yi Futian seemed to have strong adaptability in these dangerous places, and she hoped it would be the same this time. The Ren Huang descended on the edge of the abyss, and countless airflows came. He looked indifferent, turned around and transformed into a flash of lightning. His form was about to dissipate, and he had to take Zhang Yuan away. At this time, Zhang Yu's whole body was stained with blood, and killing thoughts were reflected in his pupils. Let's go, his voice rang out. The Ren Huang's phantom showed up and used his remaining strength to guard Zhang Yuan's body and soared into the sky, letting the terrible dark power eat away at his body and still rush out of this district with Zhang Yuan under his protection. Other warriors also made their way to escape. The destructive power of this space was getting stronger and stronger, and soon, only those around Yi Futian were still there. It's going to go. A Nirvana-level Zhuyin demon beast came to Zhu Zhao and said. At this moment, it was not easy to escape. He let out a yell and turned into Zhu Yan's original form. The huge beast stood on the ground like a mountain. Zhu Zhao looked in the direction of the abyss, but the Nirvana-level Zhu Yan great demon beast seized him directly, asking the Sword Saint and others, "Do you want to go with us?" "You can go," the Sword Saint said. The Zhu Yan great demon beast let out a roar, took his people and soared into the sky, escaping the space. The Sword Saint raised his foot and walked toward the abyss. The Sword Saint's whole body was covered by the demon might. Yaya and Yi Wuchen were severely injured. Yi Futian and Xiaqing Yuan had been to the abyss. How did they go? Where should they go? The Sword Saint approached Yaya, raised his head and asked Black Wind Condor. "Condor, is Yi Futian all right?" The Black Wind Eagle stood in front of the abyss, staring down and said, "They were still going down." He looked back at Sword Saint and said, "Glass Saint, I am afraid she is in danger." How deep was this abyss? The Sword Saint lowered his head. He inserted the demonic sword on the ground next to Yaya, holding the demonic sword with one hand. Suddenly the mighty demonic willpower swept out, dispersing all evil spirits. He was covered by the demonic will, and seemed to be enduring very intense pain. Yaya sent the Glass Saint to death. However, Yaya intended to prevent Yi Futian from being taken away. Yi Futian had too many secrets on him, and must not be taken away. If he was taken to the Violet Heavenly Palace, he would die. So, Yaya asked the Glass Saint to send Yi Futian to the abyss, which was equal to letting her die. He understood that Yaya was making the right choice. Yi Futian had survived too many life and death situations, especially in the secret relics. His survivability was amazing. If he went to the abyss, there was still a chance for him. But if he was taken away, he would be killed. And that was also why Yaya sacrificed her life to block the Renhuang. Yuxing walked to Yi Wuchen's side. At this time, Yi Wuchen was eroded by the darkness. He was not only seriously injured, but not even like himself. Yaya and Yi Wuchen were the injured the worst, and they had more than just injuries. Yaya used what was left of her power to stop the opponent from taking Yi Futian away, and the other one, as a doctrine saint, pulled the sword and induced the demonic power entering his body. How did he afford the pain? Yuxing came near Yi Wuchen and sat cross-legged in front of him. His whole body was in golden radiance, and there was Buddha's whispering echoing between the sky and the earth. The golden aura of Buddha shrouded this place, and also wrapped around Yi Wuchen's body. Behind Yusheng, the Buddha's light shone, and many Buddhist statues appeared. Tens of thousands of Buddhas together worshipped the law, emitting glaring Buddhist radiance. Countless Buddhist charms showed up and flew toward Yi Wuchen's body. At the same time, Yusheng chanted Sanskrit mantras. The Sanskrit chants resonated with the sky and earth, and gradually turned into the supreme power of karma, which was trying to influence Yi Wuchen. There was nothing more that Yusheng could do, and he could only pray that Wuchen could pass through this calamity. On the other side, the Sword Saint was looking at Yusheng. There were two more severely injured people in need of being taken care of. He would take care of Yaya, and Wuchen would be in the care of Yusheng. He raised his head and glanced at this dim world. It seemed that now it had truly become a demon's cave. However, even though they were surrounded by the boundless darkness, their hearts still followed the light. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1405 The Answer. Chapter 1405 The Answer in the Abyss. The Glass Saint took Yi Futian and Xiaqing Yuan all the way down. Countless horrifying evil phantoms were rushing toward her. The strong wills of sword and wills of ice were being released from the Glass Saint's body, but could not stop the invasion of those evil spirits. She sealed Yi Futian and Xiaqing Yuan with the freezing power, and turned them into two ice statues. Boom! The Glass Saint's body was shaken violently, and a dark airflow appeared on her fair face. An external chaotic thought entered her mind, trying to swallow her willpower. She had no other thoughts, and her willpower was strong and wasn't disturbed. She continued going down, but the infinite shadows eroded her madly. More and more shadows gathered and gradually engulfed her beautiful body. The glass saint's mind fell into chaos, and various negative emotions invaded her will. At this moment, she seemed to remember a lot of things and thought of her life. She was supposed to be envied by many people, but she experienced all the cruelest things in the world. After that, she was avenged by Futian and his group, who killed the great Zhou sacred king. Although she knew Futian didn't do it for her. After all, he still helped her settle her long-standing feud. But after that war, she was hurt badly, and her 7 emotions were removed. Now she lived like a zombie, and didn't know what she was going to do. Of course, when Futian invited her to stay, she chose to stay, not because she didn't know what to do, but because, even though her emotions were removed, when she was near Futian, sometimes she could feel something. Maybe it was the hatred and anger triggered by Futian's humiliation, or it was the gratitude she had for Futian who finally avenged her. She didn't know what emotion it exactly was. Or maybe it was all of the emotions. Whoever in the world wanted to live like a zombie. After all, she still wanted to be a normal person, and wanted to survive this calamity of emotions being removed. So she stayed with Futian and his group, followed them, watching everything happen as a bystander, and also witnessing their growth. Those unforgettable experiences seemed to have become her memory. Even as a bystander, she still occasionally felt the waves of emotion, which might show her how a real person's life should be. Compared with them, her previous life had nothing but revenge and hatred. It was so pale and boring, as if she was not truly alive. Although everything that happened today looked desolate, she was still touched. Those who fought hard at all costs, like Wuxia who pulled out the sword, and Yaya who sent her to the abyss, all showed her the beauty of human nature. Perhaps this was how life should be. Sometimes she was envious, and wanted to live a life like this. Suddenly, a flash of a smile appeared in her beautiful eyes, something that had not been seen for many years, and the smile was exceptionally bright. While she was smiling, tears fell, as if she had finally found her lost self. So this is the answer, the glass saint thought. When Yaya asked her to die, she had some hesitations. Although she hesitated for a moment, she still agreed. But it was not until this moment that she found the answer. This feeling was beautiful. At this moment, a more powerful, copious life force bloomed from her body. And her will was also being sanctified at this moment. Her will for law became stronger, and an air torrent from her rushed into the sky. The glass saint at this moment broke the shackles of many years, and entered the unblemished saint plane. But what was the point of breaking through to a new plane at this time? At least in the last moment of her life, she had found the answer for herself, which was enough. She released powerful thoughts, guarding her mind and willpower against the invasion of the endless demons. Even though she might die, she would still resist. She would not be waiting for her death to come. She would do everything she could and listen to destiny's arrangement. Countless demon phantoms seemed to appear in her mind, showing their menacing fangs and claws to make her waver. For a moment, chaotic scenes appeared in her mind. She could see the scene and ruins of the horrific war of that year. And her body was falling until she gradually lost self-consciousness. After a long while, she fell onto the ground at the bottom of the abyss. Futian and Xiaqingyuan were the same. They were like 2 ice statues, falling into this bottomless dark abyss. Futian's ice statue was out of the glass saint's control. The ice over him melted little by little, and after a crackling sound, the ice statue was broken. Futian's eyelashes slightly moved in the ice, and countless horrifying shadows pounced toward him. At this time, in Futian's body, wisps of sacred light came out and shrouded his body. Some ancient trees' branches and leaves even stretched out and reached Xiaqingyuan, wrapping Xiaqingyuan's body inside. He wanted to perceive the outside world, and wanted to extend the ancient tree branches to the glass saint. But at this time he seemed to be a bit too weak. His power seemed to be exhausted. He could feel that the glass saint seemed to be struggling and contending with the demon's wills. She was getting further and further away from him. He understood that even he could not help the glass saint. With no other thoughts, Futian demanded himself to fall into a deep sleep. In the abyss, deep in the dark, a pair of extremely ominous blood-red eyes were open, but then they disappeared in an instant as if nothing could be seen. Time passed slowly. These wills that were sealed up in the abyss had long been corroded. They rushed outward wildly, crazily devouring the bodies of Yi Futian and Xiaqing Yuan, and of course the glass saint. Except that, there was only a dead silence in the abyss. Beyond the abyss, on the edge of the land, Yi Wuchen was lying on the ground, struggling in pain. Buddhist chants lingered in the space and kept pouring into his ears. The aura of the Buddhist laws enveloped his body and kept influencing his mind, trying to soothe his nerves. Aha! A low roar came from Yi Wuchen's mouth, which sounded more like the roar of a beast than the voice of a human. His pupils were glowing with bloody light, and he seemed to be having difficulty controlling himself. He glanced toward Yu Sheng with his bloody eyes that hid his cruel killing thoughts. However, it seemed as if Yu Sheng could not feel it at all. He was still sitting there, whispering the Sanskrit chants. After he finished cultivation in the Vajra region, Yu Sheng had not concentrated on the study of Buddhist laws once, let alone focused on chanting in Sanskrit. However, at this moment, he looked very solemn, just like a Buddha, constantly singing the Sanskrit chants, trying to make Yi Wuchen calm down. He knew Yi Wuchen's suffering and struggle because he was also experiencing it. But before, Yi Wuchen had pulled his sword with both hands and was eroded by the infinite willpower, which was much worse than him. Yi Wuchen was experiencing the pressure that no one had ever imagined. Boom! With a roar, Yi Wuchen rose to his feet, and a horrible dark airflow shrouded his body, as if he had transformed into a demon. He stared at Yu Sheng with a pair of blood-red eyes, raised his palm, and slashed them toward Yu Sheng's head. Yu Sheng opened his eyes. His pair of bronze bell-like eyes looked extremely calm. The Sanskrit chants in his mouth continued entering Yi Wuchen's ears. Seeing that pair of clear and deep eyes, Yi Wuchen didn't slap his hand down. He flicked his arm toward Yu Sheng violently, and after a loud sound, Yu Sheng was thrown into the air. But his body immediately flashed and soon returned. The golden Buddhist charm had never stopped flowing out of his mouth. He walked in front of Yi Wuchen, just staring at him and said, "Since you came from the Kangyi kingdom that year, you have already gone through so many ordeals. Can't you just pull through this time?" A voice entered into Yi Wuchen's eardrums saying, "You are a swordsman in training, a cultivator with a pure heart for the sword. You can combat all the evils of the world. Don't forget, Xingyu is still waiting for you." Yu Sheng's voice was deafening. Yi Wuchen heard his voice and trembled, but the life forces around him were still roaring. "Your sword hasn't chopped off all demons' heads in this world with us," Yu Sheng continued. Yi Wuchen held his head with both hands. His mind was about to collapse. His will was already engulfed as if he had been occupied by all the negative emotions, swallowed up by those chaotic wills, and became a demon-like being. But Yu Sheng had been with him. If there had not been Yu Sheng, he would have failed to hold on. He finally made a hoarse growl, and then fell on his back. His body was still trembling as if suffering endless pain. Many demon wills pounced on Yu Sheng. Yu Sheng's eyes looked extremely cold, and the sacred Buddha aura enveloped his body. Even though these demon wills were powerful, they would not be able to affect Yu Sheng's mind. Not far away in the other direction, the sword saint's entire body was engulfed by the demonic might. The horrific air flows of the demonic law were roaring. The sword saint clutched the demonic sword inserted above the ground. He and Yaya were submerged in a monstrous demonic cloud. Outside this vast and boundless area, in the distance, a group of figures was standing there, looking toward them. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The person who took the lead was Qi Xiangang, and the people around him were warriors who had not come because of the war. Zhu Zhao had also joined them. In front of them, the previous battle zone was no longer visible, wrapped in the dark mist containing extremely horrifying life forces. "Master, will they be okay?" Mu Qingyang next to him asked in worry. The life force was too terrifying. He could feel a strong threat from it, even though he was just standing on the edge. "They will be fine. They are all people with great luck, and their destinies should not just end here." Qi Xianyuan said. Let's wait. Yes, Mu Qinyang answered and nodded slightly. Then his eyes turned cold, and he said, the Violet Heavenly Palace is such a bully. Even their supreme master figure participated in the siege. If Yi Futian can survive this, he will be unable to let this all go. Qi Xinging didn't say anything, but he knew about Yi Futian's personality. At that time, Yi Futian dared to fake his identity as the seventh swordsman in the Great Li Empire to kill Li Yao. But he could also leave Dali because of him, and arranged a scheme to kill Li Yao. If this time Yi Futian could survive unharmed, even though the Supreme Master was from the Violet Heavenly Palace, Yi Futian would still seek revenge on him until he died. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1406 Constant Breakthroughs. Chapter 1406 Constant Breakthroughs. Days passed slowly. In the vast and boundless mountain ranges of Origin, demon clouds rolled over the sky, but the mountains were still barren and dead silent. A few months ago, countless warriors stepped into the mountains, and now many people had died here. Of course, there were also quite a lot of people who had found the ruins of the ancient battlefield and unearthed what ancient demon emperors and renhuangs had left. But of course, there were more dangers than opportunities, and a lot of cultivators had been buried in the mountain range of Origin. Yi Futian escaped danger. At this time, the Sword Peak had collapsed, and in the land full of tumbling evil forces, Yi Wuchen had thought about giving up many times, but Yusheng kept him in the Buddha light all the time. The Buddhist chants kept falling upon his ears, and helped him to see a faint glow of dawn in the abyss of agony, while he was struggling in despair. At this moment, his mind seemed to have been dissociated, and he developed many personalities. In his vague conscious space, there were many phantoms transformed from the wills. There were wills of evil spirits, wills full of destruction, and bloodthirsty wills that made him want to become aggressive. And among these wills, there was one white elusive will, which seemed to be swaying in this storm, as if it might be destroyed at any time. It was his own remaining will, which was always close to disappearing. Boom! All the wills flung at him again, trying to occupy his willpower, and then countless chaotic wills showed up again all at once. He was struggling in pain, and the horrifying bloody light reflected in his eyes. Yusheng was sitting in front of Yi Wuchen. Yi Wuchen kept rolling on the ground because of the pain, and his mouth continued to make low roars. During these months, Yi Wuchen had entered the path of demons many times, and even thought about killing Yusheng. There were also countless moments that he wanted to abandon himself, and let the demonic wills completely control him. But every time he reached the point of despair, he held on to his faith, and didn't give up. The pain he had suffered during this time even made Yusheng feel like it was nearly unbearable. Sometimes, Yusheng even thought of ending Yi Wuchen to relieve his pain. With another loud roaring sound, Yi Wuchen jumped up from the ground. His body was surrounded by the horrifying dark airflows, pitch black. Dark airflows appeared on his face, as if he was going to fall completely into the devil's way. There was bloodthirsty light in his eyes. He slowly walked toward Yusheng and said, "Just kill me." There was no end to this pain, and he feared that he would fall completely, and became a person who was not him. He'd rather die than live like this. Sanskrit charms kept coming from Yusheng's mouth. Yusheng stared at Yi Wuchen. Then he walked to Yi Wuchen's side, looking at the demonic sword obliquely inserted there. He held the sword with one hand. Yi Wuchen's pitch-black eyes trembled when seeing this. He stared at Yusheng. The Buddhist aura dissipated. Yusheng restrained the light, and suddenly the magical wills surged. A powerful devouring force swept out, and all of the sudden, the will and the sword rushed into Yusheng's body. For an instant, countless demon torrents flowed toward Yusheng, as if he had become the center of a vortex. He turned around, holding the sword with both hands, his face distorted, and dark streaks appeared on his face, blue veins visible on his arms. A look of agony showed on his face, but his eyes were unwavering. He stared at Yi Wuchen and said, "I'll stay with you." He slowly stretched out his right hand and lifted the sword, Infinite demonic flows rolled in. Yuxing stared at Wuqian and growled in a deep voice. Even though we have strong wills, the demons are in the heavens. What can we do? Boom! A horrifying light of darkness appeared in the sky, rushing into Yusheng's body. His voice resonated between the sky and earth, allowing the force to erode. Get out of me! Yusheng raised his head and let a roar. Then a terrifying will swept out. The life force around his body became stronger, and the winds of talents whistled around him. Just with one thought, Yusheng made a breakthrough and entered the true self-saint plane. Yi Wuqian looked at Yusheng, a wisp of will shaking in his heart. His eyes were trembling. What could the demons of the heavens do to him? He could enter the true self plane in an instant because he was Yusheng, a domineering figure who sneered at everything and had strong faith. Could he do it? During this trip, both Yi Futian and Yusheng were in a unique position. Yi Wuqian could barely follow the team with his tenacity, but a good state of mind couldn't make up for everything. Could he? Yusheng was bearing the pain together with him at the moment. Nobody will be left behind on our way to cultivation. Yusheng stared at him and said. Yi Wuqian's heart trembled. His eyes looked like he was driving out the evil spirits from himself, and his will was strong. Read comics on our web novel. Live for so many years, from an early age to present, the three of them had gone through fire and water, and all entered the saint plane. No one would be left behind on the path to cultivation. Wasn't it exactly what he had in mind when he pulled the sword? Everything that Yusheng did for him was the same as what he had done. Yes, Yi Wuqian nodded hard and said. He stepped forward, looked at the sword in Yusheng's hand, and extended his hand. Yusheng understood what he meant, and handed the sword to Yi Wuqian. Yi Wuqian held the sword in both hands. Even though he was in great pain, he still held it tightly. The appalling dark airflows invaded, and the endless chaotic wills whirled toward him. He inserted the sword on the ground with two hands and held it tightly, standing like a statue. Boom! At the same time, a horrific sword will rushed into the sky. The gorgeous radiance of the sword law bloomed from Yi Wuqian's body and soared up. There was not only great terror between life and death, but also great opportunities. Yi Wuqian's state of mind was sublimated. He also entered the true self plane. The sword saint looked toward them, watching them both making breakthroughs, and Yi Wuqian still insisting. A gleam of a smile appeared in his demonic eyes. After experiencing so many storms, they still had young hearts. He still remembered the time when they entered the Book Mountain. So far, they had traveled all the way here and gone through many life and death experiences. No one would be left behind on the way to cultivation. This feeling was so good. A smile flashed in his dark demonic eyes. He looked up into the distance. Was the third brother Donglu still okay in this mountain range of origin? Compared with the little brother Yi Futian, the sword saint was more worried about Gu Donglu. He believed that Yi Futian would go through this, and his belief was unshakable. The demonic might tumbled and roared. The sword will dominated the sky. The sword saint sat down, and also made his breakthrough. The three of them seemed to resonate in their states of mind, and one by one all stepped into the true self plane. In a short time, they all had entered a new level one after another. At this dangerous moment, they all strengthened their beliefs that they would all get out of here alive. Master had taught them that traveling thousands of miles was sometimes even a better choice than reading thousands of books. Even if one was familiar with thousands of ancient books, and could use all methods freely, and had extraordinary talents, his state of mind could not keep up without traveling many places, experiencing enough trials and challenging himself many times. All the Renhuang, saints and sages in the world were once just ordinary people. Even a true emperor had to go through all sufferings of the world. Nobody was born to be an emperor. The domineering life force kept roaring. The Buddha light was released again from Yusheng's body. He evolved himself and expelled evil spirits for Yi Wuqian at the same time. Horrifying air torrents flew along Yi Wuqian's body. The sword held in his hands made a clanging sound. Suddenly, a beam of terrifying sword will rushed into the sky. It was a dark sword will, releasing sword might in the void air. Yi Wuqian maintained the pose, as if he had completely turned into a statue. The sword will flowed and rolled, and a beam of bright light was released. Then another sword will was condensed and rose into the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Beams of sword wills were released. They seemed all to be transformed from the laws. Gradually, over Yi Wuqian's body, infinite beams of horrifying sword energy were born, each of which contained extremely strong laws. Yi Wuqian's body was surrounded by the sword wills, as if he would turn all the intruding thoughts into sword energy. In the abyss, the eyes with red light opened again, glancing over the abyss, and the next moment, endless airflows in the abyss roared and rushed out, rolling towards the sky above the abyss. Huh! The sword saint's face changed color. The terrifying storm currents moved in the direction of Yi Wuqian and Yu Sheng, and tried to devour them. Yi Wuqian maintained the pose and didn't move. The horrifying airflows madly drilled into the sword, flowing into the sword frantically. The sword held in Yi Wuqian's hand seemed to be devouring all the evil thoughts. Boom! Yi Wuqian was completely swallowed by the dark air currents, but he still didn't move. His face seemed to be constantly twisted and transformed. It lasted for a long time, and when everything went away, countless air flows were swept by the sword energy, and there were only horrifying air currents flowing around Yi Wuqian's body. The air between the sky and earth gradually cleared, and went back to normal, as if it was no longer the demon's land. The demonic spirit in the void air was still rolling, and in the distance, a group of cultivators was rushing to this side. They were Qi Xiangang and others who were waiting outside. They stared at the scene for a moment, and then seemed to be searching for something. Yi Futian was here. Where was he? How did those dark torrents disappear? Kong Xian flashed forward, and she saw little Condor standing on the side of the abyss like a monster statue, and he was staring at the abyss below. Yi Futian might be under the abyss. Qi Xiangang also noticed, and his mind was rolling towards that side. Yu Sheng and the Sword Saint were all safe. Hopefully Yi Futian would be too. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1407 The Mysterious Man. Chapter 1407 The Mysterious Man. Under the abyss, Yi Futian wrapped himself and Xia Qingyuan like a cocoon. At this moment he seemed to have perceived something. The ancient branches and leaves wrapped around their bodies were spreading to the surroundings, and then like a blooming flower, he and Xia Qingyuan, from inside the cocoon, were gradually revealed. They kept their eyes closed. Yi Futian had been recovering during this time while waiting for the opportunity. However, he did not expect that the evil thoughts now could recede on their own. Next to Yi Futian, Xia Qingyuan sat there quietly, also with her eyes closed. At this moment, her cheeks were burning up, her eyelashes moved, and her bright eyes narrowed into slits. She secretly opened her eyes and took a glance, and what came into view was that handsome face, and the long silver hair flowing freely in the wind. Yi Futian seemed to perceive it, and also opened his eyes. Xia Qingyuan hurriedly moved her stare away, and looked toward another direction. However, at this moment, her pupils contracted slightly, and she felt her whole body go rigid. The life force instantly swept out of her body. Yi Futian also looked forward, and the expression in his eyes suddenly changed. A chill came up his spine, and he got a lot of goosebumps. A figure was standing in front of them. The person standing there didn't release any life force, and they couldn't even sense his presence. It was as though he didn't exist. Yet he was just standing there, and looking at Yi Futian quietly. His eyes were tinged with a horrifying blood-red glow. With just a glance, he could directly penetrate Yi Futian and Xia Qingyuan's minds. Someone could even be here. But where was the glass saint? Yi Futian is here to salute you, sir. Yi Futian was tense and saluted to the figure in front of him. That person still just stared at Yi Futian, without any expression on his face, and even his body felt like non-existent. Virum. His body flashed away and disappeared directly from the abyss. Yi Futian looked up, and could only perceive a wisp of his life force. Let's go, Yi Futian said. His body soared and rose above the abyss. After a while, Yi Futian showed up outside the abyss. People there were also stunned, all staring at that figure who just showed up. Qi Xinggang looked very solemn. The person who just showed up gave him a feeling like he was unassailable. Moreover, he could even show through the abyss. Who was he? Later, when they saw Yi Futian and Xiaqing Yuan also coming up, they felt relieved. Finally, nothing happened to them. However, Yi Futian seemed to also be staring at the figure, and have no idea who he was. That figure slowly came forward, and the direction he was moving in was the direction of Yu Sheng and Yi Wuchen. More precisely, it was the direction of Yi Wuchen. He stared at the sword in Yi Wuchen's hand, and a gleam of red light flashed across that pair of eyes that had been emotionless. "Sir," Yi Futian called him. Yi Futian saw this scene and became more anxious. His body tried to move forward, but he could feel an invisible force directly covering his body. He floated in the air weakly, unable to move at all. But the person was still walking forward with his back facing Yi Futian, as if he had not released any power. Such a level of ability was simply appalling, as if this person had an invisible hand in the void space. "Wuchen," Yi Futian called Yi Wuchen and looked nervously toward him, but that figure didn't seem to want to hurt Yi Wuchen. He still just stood there watching quietly. Yi Wuchen was still standing there like a statue, holding the sword with both hands. Only his body was still surrounded by the evil life forces, which kept pouring into his body. Around him, countless air flows of sword laws converged and came into being, as if the process had never been stopped. Finally, the figure started to take action. Boom! Yu Sheng took a step out, worrying that the person would hurt Yi Wuchen. When he came near Yi Wuchen, that person waved his palm, and Yu Sheng's body was directly flung away. The two of them were not even on the same level. Read more chapter on novel full when that person stretched out one palm. Yi Wuchen's body rose a little bit, and when he clenched the fist, immediately countless air currents around Yi Wuchen all poured into his body. At this moment, the lines on Yi Wuchen's face twisted wildly. However, at this moment, there was a horrifying beam of red glow appearing in that person's eyes, and then a wisp of light rushed directly into Yi Wuchen's eyes. For a moment, those roaring thoughts in Yi Wuchen's mind suddenly quieted down and merged into Yi Wuchen's mind. Qi Zhuangnag just stared at the person. Perhaps his strength was a figment of their imagination. He slightly turned his palm, and the wind and clouds in the sky suddenly changed their color. Countless swords appeared in the void air, covering the sky and hiding the sun. He then slightly gripped his fist, and suddenly, innumerable sword wills turned into beams of bright light and rushed into Yi Wuchen's body. Yi Wuchen's floating body suddenly changed to lying there. The horrifying sword laws on the top of the sky washed his body and rushed into him madly. Yi Wuchen's body kept shivering. Seeing this scene, Yi Futian and others all held their breath and were extremely nervous. However, they could not intervene at all. Boom! Countless swords became one. Yi Wuchen's body seemed to be transformed into an extremely sharp sword, laying between the sky and the earth. Virum. At this time, Yi Wuchen opened his eyes, and an extremely radiant beam of sword shot out. His whole body now looked like a sword. His body lying in the void sky slowly stood up and floated there. Yi Futian and others all showed surprise when they saw this. Was the mysterious person trying to help Wuchen? "Thank you for your guidance, sir. My name is Yi Wuchen," Yi Wuchen said and bowed. The person raised his hand and waved. Suddenly, the sword Yi Futian had pulled out suspended in the mid-air, making a clanging sound. Seeing the sword, the mysterious man's eyes displayed a different emotion. With a wave of his hand, the sword flew directly to Yi Wuchen's side. Yi Wuchen looked at the sword and then at the mysterious man and asked, "Is this your sword, sir?" "Hanzhou." The mysterious figure said 2 words. It was the first time he spoke, and when he said the word, the sword made shrieks and seemed to be trembling, as if it had heard its name. "The sword's name is Hanzhou," the mysterious person said. Yi Wuchen watched the sword floating in front of him. The mysterious person let out a sigh. He was no longer himself, and Hanzhou had already been broken and turned into countless broken pieces. This sword was new and deserved to be born as new again. The sword was already a broken sword, with no spirit of that time. "You can rename it," the mysterious warrior said. Yi Wuchen looked at him, and knew the mysterious warrior was serious. Yi Wuchen extended his palm and held the sword. Was this a broken sword? If so, those sword fragments that were used to suppress the demons of all skies were all transformed from this sword. Today, the sword had lost its aura and power of the past. Sir, I will call it Jiuzhou, Yi Wuchen said. He came from Jiuzhou. The mysterious man looked at Yi Wuchen and nodded slightly. Why can't I understand your existence, sir? Yi Wuchen asked. The mysterious warrior looked at Yi Wuchen and did not answer. Of course, he could not perceive his existence because he was non-existent. He was the same as Yi Wuchen, except that Yi Wuchen was luckier than him. He looked up at the sky. Above the void air, the demon clouds were rolling and seemed to have changed their color. What would happen to this mountain range of origin? Sir. At this time, Yi Futian stepped forward and asked, Have you seen my friend? The glass saint brought him into the abyss, but he did not see the glass saint again. Of course, he did not want anything to happen to the glass saint. Would she survive in that environment? She's gone, the mysterious man said calmly. Yi Futian's heart trembled. So that was to say, was glass saint still alive? But how did she get out of there? The mysterious warrior still looked up at the void sky. Endless demon clouds flew back against the trend and swept towards the central area of the mountain range of origin. Not only could Yi Futian, but other people could also feel the change when they looked up. For these months, which part of the mountain range of origin had those warriors gone to? Deep in the mountain range of origin, the life force was too terrifying. Above the skydome, the scene was just like that in the doomsday. The demon clouds overwhelmed the sky, all rolling wildly in one direction. Appalling battles were breaking out everywhere in this area, including Imperial-level battles and Saint-level battles. Of course, Renhuang warriors were the main force to clear the way and push forward. Those who blocked their way were sounds crawling out of the ground, as if they were endowed with real lives. Boom! Extremely gorgeous divine light was released by a Renhuang-level warrior. Everything that it had crossed turned into nothing. But still, there was a life force in front of the Renhuang that chilled even his blood. The Renhuang looked up into the distance where he saw a terrifying storm converging above the skydome, and a very intimidating life force was being released from there. In the mighty space, all warriors marched forward violently. They had spent so many months on the trip. It was extremely difficult to reach this place, whether for Renhuang warriors or Saint Plain warriors. During this time, many warriors had fallen into the mountain range of origin and lost their lives. They kept moving forward. Among the crowd, Zhan Yuan, the supreme master of Violet Heavenly Palace, was also here. But now he was with the Renhuang warrior of the Violet Heavenly Palace. Thunder was roaring from his body, and he was heading forward. Beside them, warriors of other top powers had also arrived, and were heading forward from different directions. Gradually, they all gathered under a huge demonic cloud whose shape looked like an endless loop. They raised their heads and glanced at it. No matter what level a warrior was, they all could perceive a suffocating pressure that seemed to be able to overwhelm them. The terrifying demon cloud lay above their heads, and sometimes they could see a demon shadow in the cloud, which was about to climb out of it. It's here. A Renhuang warrior followed the destructive demon cloud and walked forward. And there he saw a single mountain peak on which a figure dressed in white sat cross-legged and looked like a scholar. The figure in white was sitting under the center of the storm. What is he doing? Warriors asked themselves. Warriors of the Violet Heavenly Palace recognized the figure. He was the descendant of the Gu clan. What was he doing there? Who brought him here? Did Gu Tianxing do that? And now he was sitting there. Who was he waiting for? They didn't know the answer, so they could only keep walking toward the mountain. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1408 Giants had all come. Chapter 1408 Giants had all come in this vast land. People who came here were almost all from the most powerful forces. From one direction, the Xiantian goddess of the Brahma's pure sky led their people to come. Beside her, Qin He, The first saintess below the goddess asked. Is this the center of the mountain range of origin? She looked up to the mountain in front of her, which towered into the sky. Yes, Xiantian goddess said and nodded. Why do we come here? Qinhe asked. They had experienced a lot of dangers during the past few months. But since they approached this area and met with the Renhuang-level figures of their sect, they had not encountered any dangerous situations. Perhaps he is the answer. The Xiantian goddess stared straight ahead and said. The mountain that towered into the clouds was not surrounded by any mountain. It was a unique and unparalleled single peak. Were all of these related to the descendants of Gu clan up there? They looked up at the sky. The might of the rolling demon clouds looked imposing between the sky and earth, and were shrouding the mountain range of origin, like boundless enormous storms. Was this what Gu Tianxing did? At this time, as the Xiantian goddess, even she was slightly convinced that Gu Tianxing might be alive. Was the news released from the prophet's palace at the time true? Would the prophecy come true? Gu Tianxing was not dead, but he would soon pass away. There would be big changes in the demon realm, and the heavenly mandate realm would also change greatly. But who was the big man in the mouth of the prophet? Many people didn't understand the secret inside. Perhaps the prophet was the only person who knew it, but the prophet chose to depart this life. They all wondered why the prophet did so. Was he trying to keep a secret? Absorbing the fortunes of the mountain range of origin, obtaining the creation of the heaven and earth. A voice came. Warriors of the Brahma's pure sky followed the voice and looked toward the speaker. He was a middle-aged figure with an imposing manner, who was from the celestial gate of vast heaven, the clan that Gu Tianxing belonged to at that time. A low roar came. It was the sigh of dragons. The Dragon God clan and other demon clans seemed a bit angry, although they had not been able to set foot on this land before. They preferred to keep their mountain range of origin intact. The mountain range of origin was a symbolic place for cultivators of the demon realm. Here was the origin of the demon realm, and the place where the demon monarch was buried. For many years, there had been great demon beasts coming from the mountain range of origin, and all the demon clans often came here to baptize themselves. For the demon realm, this mountain range of origin is their ancestral land. But now, it seemed to be destroyed. However, who had the power to go against the rule of the world and try to obtain the fortune of the mountain range of origin? Was Gu Tianxing of the world of human cultivators? The divine elephant clan walked across the sky, shaking the void air and overwhelming the sky and earth. The mountain range of origin had changed so drastically that even the ancestral bones of their ancestor, the divine elephant emperor of 10 directions, had appeared in the world. It seemed that there would be a big change in the demon realm. The warriors kept marching forward. They came to the single peak and looked up toward the figure in the upper sky. Nobody took action right away. Above the sky, the suffocating might shrouded this space. The terrifying storm hovering in the sky seemed to turn into a human face, but it was extremely blurry and difficult to see clearly. Warriors of the heavenly mandate realm had also arrived. They looked up to this side, with no emotions in their eyes, but they did not dare to take action either. That might be Gu Tianxing. That time in the purple underground sect, Gu Tianxing came and dominated the situation. At that time, no one dared to touch him, and he directly took Gu Donglu away. Who dared to stop him? The name of Gu Tianxing was enough to daunt people of the heavenly mandate realm. How many people in the world had a grand demeanor like him? At that time, Gu Tianxing was the one whose cultivation was nearest to the heavenly path in the heavenly mandate realm. As they approached the lonely peak towering in the sky, these warriors gradually all stopped and looked up at the descendant of the Gu clan. If the purple underground emperor's subordinates had not released the message, no one would have even known this person's arrival in the heavenly mandate realm, which caused such a great uproar. The demonic cloud storm tumbled, but at this moment, the space seemed extra quiet. At this moment, some demon emperors and human emperors turned around and saw a group of figures crossing the void air and descending into the space below the single peak. They were Yi Futian and his companions. They were brought here by the mysterious man. What? Many people looked shocked when they saw Yi Futian. He was still not dead? In the group of the Violet Heavenly Palace, The Supreme Master Zhang Yuan's eyes looked fierce, and there was a strong might contained in his eyes. He was wounded and taken away by Ren Huang, and after that, he had healed the injuries for 10 days. Yi Futian, they were deeply trapped in that space, and he thought Yi Futian must be dead. However, there he was still alive. Warriors of the Divine Elephant clan also showed surprise. Someone spoke to an Elephant Emperor beside him, and immediately the Elephant Emperor's eyes looked towards the place where Yi Futian was. Boom! The Elephant Emperor took a step out, and the world trembled. His foot seemed to be able to quell one side of the sky. He stepped across the void toward Yi Futian, trying to get back the demonic bone of the Divine Elephant Emperor of 10 directions. However, at this moment, the mysterious warrior raised his head. The Elephant Emperor saw a pair of bloody eyes that suddenly drowned his will. The Elephant Emperor's face turned pale. His footsteps trembled the skydome and collapsed the ground. People's eyes all turned to this side. The Elephant Emperor let out a roar, as if he was in a state of madness. He stepped out, but his steps were not moving forward. Instead, he retreated toward the upper sky and left the figure far away. The red glare in the eyes of the mysterious man dispersed. He returned to calm and looked into the distance. At this time, the sky and earth returned to peace, but many of the powerful warriors were all trembling inside. Who was this person? Warriors such as Zhang Yu also stared at them with confusion. Were they saved by a mighty figure? Who was he? Who are you? A demon emperor of Yingzhou Mountain asked. He was also about to step out, but then he saw that Elephant Emperor was shaken and was in shock, so he asked. Many people also wanted to know, but that mysterious warrior didn't even look at them. He just looked up at the figure above the single peak and the storm over his head. That was it. Is he that powerful? Yi Futian thought, with heart slightly trembling. He was quite stirred by the scene. The mysterious man in this abyss seemed to be powerful at a horrifying level. The mountain range of origin was indeed a place full of wonders. And the third brother, what was he doing? What was the storm above the skydome? Boom! At this moment, people's hearts thumped hard, and the sky shivered. Above the sky, a domineering figure stepped in the void air. When he stepped, even Renhuang-level figures felt that their bodies were going to be crushed down. All the warriors in this space had a feeling of real suffocation. Bang! Another step out, and the figure above the sky stepped down with his right foot. A phantom of a divine elephant appeared, boundless and huge. He stomped down from the skydome and hurried toward that mysterious warrior. The people around were also shivering. This elephant figure was like a deity. Every step he took in the sky threatened the great law. The warriors of the Divine Elephant clan all bowed down and worshipped, showing reverence in their eyes. The figure was the king of their Divine Elephant clan, the contemporary Elephant Emperor. However, the mysterious was still standing there, looking up at the Divine Elephant's phantom trampling down. From his body, appalling wills of the great law appeared, and a sword appeared directly over his body and towered up in the clouds. Boom! The great law roared up. The elephant phantom collided with the towering sword and together shattered and collapsed until nothing was left. The dull sound made people's blood boil, as if the blood would burst out from their ears. The vast and endless space was shrouded under an extremely suppressing might. The Elephant Emperor's eyes in the void glowed with golden light, and he glanced down. Cultivators of the top human forces were also shocked. Who was this person? There were only a few cultivators who could directly confront the Divine Elephant Emperor in the Heavenly Mandate realm, and probably there were only a few top figures of the 5 supreme forces in the world of human cultivators who had such abilities. Obviously, this person did not belong to any of them. Is this person a cultivator in the Heavenly Mandate realm? The Elephant Emperor's gaze swept toward the surrounding space. Above the sky, beams of divine light shone, and some figures gradually showed up. There were altogether 5 people, one of whom wore a purple robe, standing above the skydome, like a ruler of the great law, his power overwhelming the space. He was the lord of the Violet Heavenly Palace. Another man was dressed in a black suit, standing with his hands on his back. He stood there like an insurmountable mountain peak, as the lord of the 10,000 Divine Mountain. From another direction, A figure in a Taoist robe with immortal temperament showed up. He looked very young, with a gallant bearing. This peerless person was the master of the Jiang clan of Celestial Gate of Vast Heaven. The two figures who showed up, in the end, had the most outstanding temperament. One of them, the moment she appeared, overshadowed all the 9 skies, and her beauty seemed to contain all the colors of the world. She was the lord of the Brahma's pure sky, the most prestigious woman in the heavenly mandate realm, and she was the only one. Whether in terms of beauty or strength, she was at the highest peak in the heavenly mandate realm. The other man was bathed in dazzling divine light. He wore a crown and a royal robe with a bearing that made all people in the space want to kneel in front of him. He was the current imperial lord of the heavenly mandate dynasty. When they appeared, people of all top forces bowed down and worshipped. Qi Ji, the top figure of the heavenly mandate realm. Yi Futian recognized him and thought to himself, quite shocked. Of course, he knew that the third brother did not have such great influence. All was because of Gu Tianqing's appearance. Later, the monstrous demonic might shrouded all the skies. Many super demon beasts showed up, like the Dragon Emperor of the Divine Dragon clan, with extremely magnificent bearing, overwhelming the world. The Lord of the Sky Demon Court stood there, dazzling even more than the sun, and the subordinates around him were all super great demon beasts. The Purple Gold Rat Emperor was dressed in black. Although not as handsome as others, he was also unparalleled while standing there. "May I know your name, sir?" At this moment above the sky, the Imperial Lord of the Heavenly Mandate Dynasty looked down at the mysterious man and asked. There was such a figure who could fight against the Divine Elephant Emperor in the Heavenly Mandate realm, but he as the Lord did not even know. Songlan's descendant, the mysterious figure said when he looked at the Imperial Lord of the Heavenly Mandate realm. The Heavenly Mandate Dynasty Imperial Lord squinted his domineering eyes slightly in surprise. Not only him, but many top characters in the Heavenly Mandate realm all also looked at him in shock. The named Songlan sounded strange to the vast majority of people in the Heavenly Mandate realm. But how could those top figures not know? This mysterious warrior was not referring to himself. He was talking about the Imperial Lord of the dynasty, who was the descendant of Songlan. The Imperial Lord Clan Lan was the ex-Imperial Lord of the Heavenly Mandate Dynasty. This person actually belonged to the previous era. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.